And welcome in everyone on the Zoom. I'll pass it over to William. Makai, can we bring down the music? Thank you. And unmute the main Zoom. We're good? Okay. Well, hello, everyone. Welcome to Concordia University's fourth space. And thank you for joining us today for a series of events under the title Concordia's Global Learning Day. And it's a closer look at international learning opportunities here at Concordia. But to help situate you, we are streaming to YouTube and we are live from Fourth Space, which is located on unceded Indigenous lands in Chidage, Montreal. And here at Fourth Space, we work with our university community to mobilize knowledge by co-creating daily activities that examine research questions, look closely at projects that are in development here at the university. We're running this event today as a live streamed Zoom meeting, so we welcome any comments or questions in the chat or with the raised hand there. And for those of you in the space, if you'd like to participate during the Q&A period, just let us know by raising your hand, and we'll be sure to get a microphone to you. And with that, it is now my pleasure to hand it over to William Cheeb, Associate Vice President, International Chief of Staff for Concordia. William.
Thank you, Doug. Bonjour à toutes et à tous. Quel grand plaisir de me trouver parmi vous ce matin. Et dans cet événement en particulier. Nous sommes aujourd'hui, comme Doug l'a bien dit, pour célébrer l'éducation internationale et promouvoir les différents programmes internationaux offerts à l'Université Concordia. Internationalization is at the heart of our mission. It is one of our strategic directions, embrace the world. And while internationalization of higher education could mean different things to different people, today we're celebrating international partnerships and programs that provide more opportunities for mobility for students, research, and development. For students, studying abroad plays a critical role in shaping their future, allowing them to immerse in different cultures, enhance their critical thinking, and gain knowledge and empathy required to engage with global issues. For faculty, internationalization provides new perspectives to tackle their research challenges that we face today in our society, whether it's in health, environment, finance, cybersecurity, any other areas are global, and they require different viewpoints and studies. Concordia faculty understood this long time ago, and they are actually the champions of our institutional internationalization. Their individual global connections constantly flourish into institutional partnerships, opening doors for students and Concordia to shine globally. Today, Concordia enjoys hundreds of active partnerships with institutions in the four corners of the world. And again, thanks to our faculty members who made the first steps for these connections. International education keeps on evolving. What started known for many years as a focus on student exchange is now a wide range of programming. Yes, student exchange is important, but we also organize international field schools, internships, development opportunities, case competitions, as well as international research placements. Je vous invite à visiter la foire dans l'atrium et les tables des étudiants ici au Fourth Space pour apprendre davantage sur les programmes internationaux offerts à Concordia. In addition, the event will host exciting panel discussions showcasing research and industry perspectives. I'm grateful for the panelists. I would be remiss if I don't thank the Fourth Space team, Doug, Jacqueline, merci, Concordia International team, especially Caroline Eastwood, who did a wonderful job in organizing this event and making it happen. Thank you all. Merci, and to our students, go discover the world. I'll hand it now to our first panel. André-Philippe, all yours.
Great. Thank you, William. It's really a pleasure to be here with our esteemed panelists. We're here to discuss how international experience can benefit the young professionals both in the workplace as well as throughout their lives, with a focus on the impact that it can have on their career. We have all of our panelists here have decades of experience in international experience, and I think what really is the emphasis will be to what can we what can we achieve and what can we get from going abroad and broadening our vision, broadening our scope. I want to introduce myself first. So my name is André-Philippe Chenail. I am Senior Project Director at Invest Québec International. I'm basically managing foreign direct investments from Japan mostly, as well as from the Middle East area, so the Arabic Peninsula. I'm also the chair of the Quebec-Japan Business Forum, a bilateral trade association between the two nations. We're joined by esteemed panelists such as Phil Cole, who is chairperson of the Aerospace Industries Association of Canada, as well as Vice President Business Development for CERT Center Canada and Marinvent Corporation. I'll let Phil explain that further in a minute. Ms. Hawa Keita, who is the lead on Concordia Africa Initiative, and Ms. Phoebe Nguyen, who's Executive Director at Canada ASEAN Business Council and formerly Director of the Office of the President and Philanthropy at National Bank of Canada and Project Leader, Office of the President at National Bank of Canada. So quite the background. Thank you to each of you to join us today. I'd like to hear from each of you first before we dive into what makes and what are the advantages that a young professional can gain into his or her profile from international experience. I'd like to hear from you, looking back, what role did international experience play in your professional development? So please introduce yourself further, but really, look back into your experience and explain, looking back, what role did it play in your professional development? Phil.
Okay, well, good morning, everybody. Thanks very much, André-Philippe. So Phil Cole, I work for several aerospace companies here in Montreal. By definition, aerospace is a global industry, and we're developing products that are going to last 30, 40, 50 years. So we're developing them with younger people in mind. I'm not going to be flying in 30, 40 years' time. I'm probably not going to be above the daisies in 30 or 40 years' time. So when we're putting money into developing very expensive products that take an awful long time, we need to develop them with much younger folks in mind. And because they're for a global market, we need to take into account international perspectives in order to be able to develop products that not only suit fat, middle-aged white people, but they suit everybody. So that's key. You'll hear from my accent that I'm not from here. So by definition, I'm kind of an international student, I guess. I was very fortunate. I took a job that caused me to see the world. I've lived in 3 continents and 6 different countries, and I wouldn't be doing what I do today if I hadn't got that experience. It gives so many different perspectives that are very, very useful in the industry. Enough from me.
Thank you for the introduction. Hello, so my name is Hawa, lead of the Africa Initiative. I don't have decades of experience at work. However, I have decades of experience in international relations and everything. So some background about me. I was born in Senegal. We moved as I was young to come in France. And then for my studies, I went to the States and also Canada. Like the way international experience shaped me is, it's really part of who I am right now. So I consider myself as a global citizen, whether it is the jobs or what I'm really passionate about. It's actually shaped by this experience that I had through my whole life, working internationally. So it's working or living internationally. I don't think I started at 6 years old, but so like it's about the relationships that you make. It's about the vision that you have about the world and being aware of, for example, all the opportunities that you have somewhere or all the challenges that you have somewhere else. Today, I'm as a lead of the Africa Initiative at Concordia University. My main mandate is really to develop strategic collaboration between the university and stakeholders in Africa. if I did not had all this experience, like these decades of experience, like, traveling around the world or living in different places, I do not think I will be, I would have the tool that I'm using today. So yes, to summarize. And so even before that, I used to work at Seed Concordia, which is also an initiative within Concordia University as the executive director, where we had to, we had internship programs for Concordia students in Uganda and even in other places such as Senegal or Colombia. And just this experience, I would, again, I'm emphasizing it, I would not have the tools to have this experience without the life that I had in different parts of the world. To summarize, that's it.
Great, thank you.
Oh, yes.
Greetings, everyone. So my name is Nguyen, the Executive Director in Canada of the Canada ASEAN Business Council. For those that doesn't know what ASEAN stands for, it stands for the Associations of Southeast Asian Nations, and it is composed of 10 Southeast Asian countries. So a bit of my background: I'm a proud Concordia University graduate, 1998. So at least 20 odd years ago, and I had the chance to join National Bank headquarters and stayed there for 22 years. And the last few years at National Bank, the last 10 few years at National Bank, I did a lot of international relations because National Bank bought a bank in Cambodia. And so since I was overseeing 25 million a year to support mainly projects and communities, I did initiated the first international project for National Bank in Cambodia when we bought the bank, and we work with the UNDP in Cambodia and the UNAC here in Canada to put together a financial literacy project for entrepreneurs and students in Cambodia. So I had the chance to really travel there and work with our people there. And at the same time, during those years, I joined actually the Canada ASEAN Business Council as a chair. And today, it's been 2 years, I opened the Canada office of that organization here about 2 years ago, and doing 100% international relations and diplomacy with also a economic perspective to that organization. So I would say that, I wasn't born here. We're all international, I think, since we were young. But I immigrated in 1980 as a refugee, so did stay in a refugee camp for a year in Thailand before arriving here. So it was the wave of the Indo-Chinese or the Vietnamese Bo people, as you might know. Very privileged to have studied here, and then really I think international has always been part of me, because as I grew up, and sometimes you don't realize there's more out there, but at some point when there's I've always listened to international music, watched international movies, local also, but then it brought me to really have a desire to seek anything international in my entire life, from personal to career. And I think you gain so much. You gain knowledge, you gain cultural discovery, history of all these countries, and it brings a really broader, all my colleagues here have mentioned it gives you a broader view of what's happening in this world, because we are not alone. And I think, it's, for me, I do consider myself a citizen of the world, because initially when I immigrated here, I was actually stateless. So even though I was Vietnamese born in Laos, in my official paper, I didn't belong to any country, until I arrived here. So I suppose, yeah, naturally for me, it's like citizen of the world. Thank you.
Great testimony, Thibi. Thank you. And you heard it here first, folks. We are not alone. So thank you for your testimony. Thank you for your sharing your backgrounds, everyone. I really appreciate the depth of experience that we have lined up here, from expertise in the aerospace sector, which is a long career path and such a wide expertise sector, to Africa and Southeast Asia, which are no questions, the most young and up and coming growth markets as well. Definitely great locations to launch a career that will have a long-term impact on your positions and responsibilities and what you can achieve. I'd like to ask some pointed questions before opening as well as to more general discussion. Phil, given your experience as an aerospace executive, can you describe a bit more what you're looking for when you're looking at candidates that have international experience? Like, how does a candidate with international experience stand out from someone that has studied and honed only on technical skills? How do both differentiate when you're doing interviews? Go ahead.
There we are. So that's a great question, André-Philippe. Maybe it's easier to explain how we find people and the kind of things that we're looking for. Maybe start from that perspective. So academic qualifications are great, but all they are is a representation of the tool set that you come to a job with. They're not indicative of whether or not you're going to be successful in a job. They're not indicative of whether or not you're going to fit into a team. And we're a small team. So personal relationships and how people interact with other individuals, I don't want to say it's more critical than the academic qualifications, but it's up there at least on level par. So when we're searching for people, we're really interested in how they relate to other individuals. So a lot of the ways that we look for people are to be in a mix amongst people and just see how they behave. We're viewing from afar initially to see how people are interacting with each other. We really love the team competition stuff, the case competition stuff. It's great for us. There's a competition here at Concordia that's the only one in the world that mixes engineering and commerce together. So teams of individuals that are thrown together, given incredibly hard challenges to do in a very short period of time. And over the course of a week, we get to see how these teams form, how they work together in what is, from an industry perspective, very representative of what you're going to be doing when you go and work for a company. You're not on your own. You're going to be working with other people. You're going to be having to work cross disciplines. It's great if you're an engineering graduate, but if you don't understand business and commerce and human relationships as well, you're not going to work very well. And you're certainly not going to integrate into a team very well. So we spend an awful lot of time looking for the soft skills and the interpersonal skills that people have. By definition, that means if you're used to dealing with folks from other cultures because you've been exposed to them, whether it's here in Canada being exposed to a broad community, or even better, if you've been out and lived in those places, because let's be honest, when we're tourists, we don't really see countries. The only way you see them is to go and live in them. That is experience that you can't teach that stuff. You really can't teach it. You have to experience it. Hope that helps.
Great, thank you. Yeah, it makes me really wonder that, as you were talking, I was thinking, university shapes what you know, but international experience shapes who you are and who you know as well, which is quite an important part of the equation. Thibi, as the executive director of the largest bilateral trade investment organization with ASEAN countries, what are CABC members telling you about the type of profile they seek when hiring to grow their footprint in Asia?
So just to mention Canada, so our Canadian government and our Quebec government launched an Indo-Pacific strategy the last year, and for Quebec 2 years ago. What that means is that our country is actually actively creating opportunities for businesses and for citizens to seek international relations, international careers, in anything international between Canada and 10 Southeast Asian countries. Some countries are more prioritized, such as Singapore, Thailand, Vietnam, Indonesia, and Malaysia. But the idea is that we see that Canada already has many international collaborations, but the most recent one is really with ASEAN and with Indo-Pacific. So currently there's 2 negotiations in place, like official negotiations, one with the Canada-ASEAN Free Trade Agreement, and the other one is the Canada-Indonesia CEPA agreement. So hopefully these 2 will be signed by end of the year, end of 2024 or 2025. But with that being said, a lot of our members, so members of the Canada ASEAN Business Council, has been with us for 11 years now. And others, we see there's a boom in major Canadian corporations that wants to join because they see the importance between Canada and Southeast Asian nations. And what they say often, and they know, so we see they recruit a lot of international profile students, Canadian international profile students, because I think they know the importance of international knowledge. So when you've had a bit of experience internationally and you come back to Canada, you have something more than others that were here, right? You agree, Phil? And so, and even though often sometimes it's not about, having your first job international. Sometimes it's about also having an internship international. And that might be easier, especially if you're still studying, doing international exchange and then being there and, seeking experience, even non-paid experience in international companies. That really reinforce your CV when you actually want to come back to Canada and want to work in any international relations department. So I think often, for sure they seek that experience somehow in the students and in obviously in more experienced employees.
Thank you, Thibi. I really like the nature of your comment on the value of international knowledge, right? It's not something that can be necessarily quantified, but it still has an inherent value that makes you stand out. And, about unpaid internship, I don't necessarily recommend them, but I went through that path. So I definitely know what you mentioned. I used to be a high school teacher. And when my friends were all taking their summer vacation, I was doing, an unpaid internship, but I was a teacher, so, receiving my summer pay. And I was doing unpaid internship with a friend of mine that was a head of Canada-China Business Council, because I wanted to learn the ropes. I wanted to learn how to be involved between Canada and China bilateral relations. So I ended up doing 2 unpaid internships in a windowless office, translating their website, building their database, and so on. And when the opportunity arises, as we say, right, luck is a mix of preparation and opportunity. An interview showed up, and I did everything. I translated their website, I knew the pitch, I knew everyone. So basically, it was very easy for me to just, raise my arm and grab that position. But I still have not found back my tan from that experience. So I'm still trying to get some more sun. So I want to turn the table to Hawa, because you're leading the Concordia Africa initiative, and I really like how the organization is positioning young professionals and students participating into it through different growth initiatives. And that's really something that should be known to a wider audience. So can you tell us more about it and what makes it stand out from other programs in terms of value of international knowledge that's being taught to participants?
Yes, sure. So the Concordia Africa initiative is an initiative in order to position Concordia University in different places in Africa. So we know the demographic situation, like it's the youngest continent in the world. By 2050, we estimate that it might be the largest workforce in the world. So for Concordia University as a higher education institution, it is primordial to position yourself in order to be a stakeholder, for example, related to education, related to exchange of knowledge. So for now, the Africa Initiative does not necessarily involve students right now, but what we're looking forward, especially in the medium to long term, is to be a catalyzer for definitely more exchange between knowledge that we have in here and knowledge that we have over there. And again, I've mentioned the aspect of youth, a very young population, but a population that definitely needs education in order to thrive, right? A lot of things are changing nowadays. We have, we all talk about ChatGPT, but for example, AI that is changing a lot of different elements within the industries, or other elements that we might not necessarily think right now, but are, changing our day-to-day life. For example, we talk about climate change. We talk about, cybersecurity. Like a lot of things are changing right now, and it will be, I'd say, a shame for a higher education institution to not necessarily get involved or be present in a place where we have such a high an important growth of the population. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I'd like to point out, right, that the Quebec government has offices in 3 different locations in Africa. We have a general delegation, which is basically an embassy in the continent, in Dakar, in Senegal. And then in Abidjan, in Côte d'Ivoire, we have an office there as well, and in Rabat, in Morocco. And anyone that's really interested in growing their exposure to the Africa continent should definitely reach out to both Quebec government offices, but as well as the federal government offices and embassies and consulate general there. There's always a lot of resources that you can leverage to your benefit over there. I personally walk around and tell entrepreneurs and professionals that you should never travel alone, right? You'd never go abroad, even as a student or as a young professional, never go abroad. If you want to go as a tourist, be my guest. But if you want to go abroad and gain international experience and gain exposure, communicate that to as many stakeholders as you can, because you never know what those seeds that you sow, what they will yield in a few weeks, in a few months. So it's really, really worthwhile. And I really appreciate, Hawa, your comment as, even though, just to generalize what you mentioned, right? Position yourself as a stakeholder, right, within the Africa Initiative, yes, but as an individual, when going abroad, keep that in mind. Position yourself as a stakeholder. Because if you look at, let's talk about Quebec as a nation, right? Quebec as a nation, well, we're like a small tribe. We're 8.4 million people now, but it's 0.01% of the population. So when you go in Abidjan, how many Quebecers are there? 15, 20, I don't know, but a very small population. So if you come in and you position yourself as a stakeholder, what can you bring to the table? People will listen to you, even as someone wanting to gain experience.
Yes, so talking about the Quebec strategy, so there are several pillars, but one of them is education. And we have 54 states and a lot of different languages, but something that we have in common is the fact that we have Francophone and also Anglophone countries. And the terms of the students' mobility coming from Africa is one of the fastest growing, including for Canada, right? We are seeing, I would say we know that there is a demographic change right now, a very specific context, but also a lot of migration coming from Africa to Canada. Mm-hmm. And even though in terms of like a percentage of trading between Canada and Africa not being very, very high, we expect a pretty important growth, right? So if, for example, we have to compare the volume of the trade between the three largest Asian countries and the three largest African countries, like there is a gap of 22 times. Right, so we definitely know that there is an important need of positioning yourself, not only as an institution, but also as an individual. But we also understand that many companies are looking forward to work in Africa, knowing the demographic context, but also all the different resources that we have. As of now, we estimate that 30% of mining resources are still in Africa. 60% of arable lands are in Africa. If you're not necessarily positioning yourself, whether it is as an institution or as an individual, there is maybe a huge opportunity cost. And this is what we have seen right now. A lot of countries are positioning themselves. We've seen, of course, China, Turkey, Russia, France and Canada. We do not necessarily hear it that much, but it's an important element for us to, exchange way more with Africa, especially with that demographic context.
Great, thank you.
May I add something to
Go
what
ahead.
I was saying? So today you see more African countries and Southeast Asian countries working together. So there's a lot of, so in the east side of the continent, we see a lot of those international interactions. What I see here with our business council is that I do see an emerging immigration of Africans to Canada. I see it a lot, I would say, in Alberta. We've been dealing with a lawyer from Nigeria in Alberta, and there's the community is actually from Africa is actually immigrating a lot to Canada slowly. And I think what you're saying, I think within the next 5 to 10 years, we'll see that that movement, Canada, Africa, really exploding, because with also the connection to now we hear a lot Canada, ASEAN, but I do see Canada and Africa developing relationship. And we do have in Canada a Senator Amina Gerba, who I know very well, and she promotes a lot Africa to Canada. Obviously a lot Cameroon because she's from there, but nonetheless a lot Africa. So I think here you have all the different continents where you can seek opportunities in internationally. And one last comment, if you don't mind, about stakeholders, position ourselves as stakeholder. I think the thing is, as Canadians who studied in well-known, reputable universities in Canada, when you go international, they actually are very open to listen to everything you know. So your knowledge, your connections in Canada are important for them. So I think, prior to even going international, develop that network in Canada, develop that knowledge in Canada, and then you really have something to bring to any country that you seek a career or or to go and live there.
Great.
That's my comment.
Thank you. Thank you. Before we turn to the Q&A, there's short questions that I'd like to have brief answers from the panel, as I believe that for the audience, it may be worthwhile to get, just your thoughts on this. So what first comes to mind, please share it with the audience. We'll begin with Thibi. What is the first step someone with no prior international experience could take, right? Someone that is listening to us and has been thinking about it, wants to say, okay, I'll take the job. Where, how? What should they do? What comes to your mind?
You know, today social media is very strong. Use LinkedIn. I have a lot of international from India everywhere. Obviously, you have to be cautious, but LinkedIn is actually a very good way to connect with international you know, do research the different countries where you're actually interested in. Find their major corporations, and also I would say even business. I would say business associations of those countries, real because they, you know, they have all the major corporations and the SMEs that are members. So it could be a very good way to actually access businesses by either entering or being a member of these business associations in other countries.
Thank you. Phil, same question. Where to begin?
Okay, so a couple of different approaches. Maybe if one approach might be, if you're still studying, is to reach out to foreign universities in countries that you're interested in and see if you can get a switch so that you can do a semester or 2 semesters abroad and then come back. That's a really, really good way of doing it. And the other thing is leverage our governments abroad, embassies and consulates abroad, both the provincial ones and the federal ones. They're everywhere. And you're going to meet people that they're paid to help you guys. So, I mean, it's their job. So reach out to them and use them, and they will help you.
Thank you. Hawa, same question.
Yes, so as we're at Concordia University, and it's mostly Concordia students, I would say first contact Concordia International, right? They're here for that. As you mentioned, they're really here for that. Like, there are so many different programs, whether it's to do an exchange or even sometimes field visits. So it's very important to also leverage with the resources that we have in here. And yes, as Phil mentioned, like we have so many different, for example, Quebec and Canada are very well represented internationally. Do not hesitate to contact, you know, like the diplomatic offices abroad. But the other elements, as a student, I remember every time I was like, it's not the right time for me. You know, I might not necessarily have all the resources, I might not necessarily have all the knowledges, but I think it's very important to think about the fact that there is no perfect time to go abroad. So sometimes we have to dare. We can also have like some resources available. For example, in Quebec, we have Logique program, but also other bursaries available for students. So we should not be feared to, you know, seek the different resources and information available for that. Particularly as a student, I think life is not, it's difficult to have a life as flexible as when you're a student, because as you start to work, as you start to have way more responsibilities, it can be sometimes more challenging, depending definitely of the job or the career that you have. But that's also what I've noticed. So there's no perfect time to go abroad there.
Great.
Yeah.
Thank you. The only thing there is to fear is fear itself. And I remember very vividly in 2009, I decided I wanted to go back to China. I bought a ticket 3 days in advance, and I went and spent a month and a half over there just wandering the streets of Beijing. We'll never do that before I'm 65 or 70, I guess. So yeah, you really do cherish that flexibility that you have. Last question, lightning answers, please. What mindset, what core qualities should we hone when we want to launch a career with international experience, right? What should we look, when we look at ourselves, what should we put in our baggage and make sure that we have plenty of to make sure that we are able to successfully achieve that? Phil.
I knew you'd come first here. One adage that I learned as a kid from my parents: build bridges, don't burn them. It takes an awful long time to build a good relationship, and it takes seconds to destroy it. So approach life from that perspective. Everyone you meet has potential value to you, even if it's just as a friend, but potentially other values to you later in life, and just approach life that way.
Thank you.
I would say expect the unexpected, right? So we tend to sometimes live in our own bubbles, and, you know, like we might also make projections believing that, oh, the fact that I'm working in that area, like things will be like this or like that. But it's very important to be open-minded. I know that it sounds obvious working internationally, but it's very important to remind yourself that there is an author that I really like. His name is Dany Laferrière. He says that when you're traveling abroad, you're not necessarily learning about, yes, you're learning about what is happening abroad, but what you're learning most about is about yourself and where you're coming from. So it makes you questioning a lot of things, like, you know, all the foundation that you had through your whole life. As you travel abroad or you work internationally, you might have to question yourself, all of these things. So expect the unexpected. That's it.
Maybe?
So adding to the two very important mindset that you have to have, I would say, you know, make sure to respect. So anywhere you go, make sure to respect the culture, make sure to respect and learn, really be, as Hawa mentioned, open-minded, but at the same time, respectful of where you're going. I think that's important in life. And that's how also they will learn from you and you will learn from them. And at the end, enjoy the experience. You know, you have nothing to lose. You only have things to gain. So really enjoy the experience going international.
Great closing comment. You know, as we say, when in Rome, do as the Roman. But the Chinese, in fact, also have this, 入乡随俗, when you enter a village, follow the traditions. So it's a globalized knowledge, really, that, you know, we need to remind ourselves when we're abroad, just, you know, go with the flow. That's how you learn. We'll turn the mic to questions, Q&As from the crowd, from chat at YouTube. Feel free. Yes, in the crowd. Please present yourself first.
Hi, my name is Zoe Heffering. I was curious, when you say leverage embassies in countries you're interested in studying in or working in, what exactly do you mean by that? How would a student go about leveraging an embassy?
Yeah, no, it's a good question. I'll tell you a story. When I first got sent to Kuala Lumpur, so I was posted to Kuala Lumpur for a period of time. And so I was an expat in Malaysia. The first thing you have to do is register with the embassy. And I thought, you know, this is, I don't know why I'm doing this, but I have to do it, so I'll do it. I could not believe how connected the community of expatriates living abroad. My social calendar was full immediately, just because I registered with the embassy. There were events that they're very, very progressive in connecting people with the local community, very integrated with industry, very integrated with the academic institutions. So literally pick a country that you want to work, that you maybe want to experience, find out where the embassies are and just reach out to them. Tell them you're a student, tell them your story. They will help you, I promise you. Yep.
Go ahead.
So I totally agree with Phil. And one of the ways as a student, I think, is that you can actually reach out to them and even have a project and present them a student project, and say, look, I want to be connected to whichever other people, a business council, or anything. And they are paid to come and support Canadian citizens abroad in that country, definitely.
LinkedIn is the best place to identify someone in that. So the service is called the TCS, the Trade Commissioner Services. In Quebec, there's just similar, which are attachés commerciaux, which you can connect with them. They're very easy to find on LinkedIn. And for every single sector, be it art, be it technology, there are people in embassies paid to connect and foster a network on behalf of Canadians in any country. So that's how you leverage.
If you seek ASEAN countries, we are all connected to them. So just reach out to me, no problem.
Yeah. Leverage TBN.
Leverage me, yes.
Go ahead. Yes.
And don't forget Concordia International.
Great. Thank you. Any other questions? We're happy to take them. Go ahead.
Hi, my name is Paula. So I wanted to ask, because I'm an aerospace engineering student. So the thing is that I came late, so I don't know the countries that you have been and the work that you do, and kind of how like your experience and like being an international citizen has affected that or has like improved that.
Great comment. Yeah.
So if you're not terribly busy immediately after this, just come and grab me and we can talk. You know, in fact, you're an aerospace undergraduate here. I'm shocked. So that's great. Let's talk.
Right. Perfect. Private lesson. Any other questions that we would like to ask? Go ahead. Second question. La complémentaire.
Yeah, no, just one more question about accessibility, because I think there's a lot of students who are interested in international opportunities, but don't have the resources, and even after trying to access them, have a difficult time. So I'm just curious about if Concordia International or any other of your institutions has been thinking about that, how to get students more international opportunities.
Okay, so I can let my colleague who is behind talking about the different opportunities that they have for international, for students who have international experience. But yeah, definitely it can be a great challenge, like financially speaking. Yeah, or even discuss with her later if you want.
Visit the fair. Visit the fair. All right.
So if you're interested in Southeast Asian countries, so our business council do host a lot of delegations from all those Southeast Asian countries. We receive them quite regularly in a year. And, you know, I think I'd be happy that you attend and then that you also just learn more about the country and even connect to them. Develop your network. We have offices in Singapore and in Bangkok, so it could be an opportunity if you ever want to go to Singapore or Bangkok, that we can connect also you there. So definitely we do work with universities and offer internship to international students.
Thank you. Thank you, Phil, Hawa, and Phoebe for joining that discussion. I think it was very fruitful. Thank you for sharing your thoughts. Thank you to the audience and everyone online as well. Please give a round of applause to our speakers. Feel free to spam the chat as well as much as you'd like. With that, I think our speakers will stick around for a few minutes. Feel free to connect. It was a pleasure to host that session, and have a great day. Visit the fair.
Yes, thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming into ForSpace for this conversation. To everyone online and those of you in the space, thanks for joining us and all your questions. We're going to close up the Zoom and the live stream now, but just a quick reminder, this conversation is already available on our YouTube channel if you want to revisit it or share it. But please join us right now for the Field School student tables. We have some amazing projects from the Field School in Mexico. We have the Field School in Iceland has set up an incredible amount of things happening over there, as well as our group from Prague with the iceberg, which you definitely want to go over and see that. So please stick around and check that out. And then join us back later for a panel on the value of global experiential learning. Okay, thanks everyone. See you soon.